जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्री श्रीमद् डिवाइन ग्रेस शिला भाई चरणारविंद भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी शिला प्रभुपाद की जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद् डिवाइन ग्रेस शिला भक्तिवेदांत सरस्वती ठाकुर शिला प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की नमस्कार श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से को श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसति गौर भक्तवृंद की श्री श्री राधा गोपी जनवल गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की मायापुर नवदीप धाम की पुरुषोत्तम श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की गंगा माई की जमुना माई की भक्ति देवी की तुलसी महारानी की समवेत भक्त वृंद की हिताय गौर हरि प्रेमानंदे all reasonable devotees, all reasonable devotees, all reasonable devotees, all glories, all glories, Shri Guru and Gaurang, Jai Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Eleven, right? I mean 10. Yeah, 11. Yeah, tomorrow is 12. Yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Third canto, 25th chapter, 11th verse. Tantagataam sharanam sharanyam Swabhritya samsara taro kutharam Jigyasaya prakrite purushasya Namami sadharma vidam varishtam 3:25:11. 24. Sorry. Sorry. From next chapter. So I was thinking. Sabhajayan vishuddhena Chetasa tatchikirshitam Prahrishyamanir ashubhi Kardamam chedam abhyadhat Sabhajayan vishuddhena Chetasa tatchikirshitam Prahrishyamanir ashubhi Kardamam chedam abhyadhat Sabhajayan Vishuddheshitam Chetasa tatchikirshitam Praharshanamir ashubhi Prahrishyamanir ashubhi Kardamam chedam abhyayat Sabhajayan worshipping Vishuddhena pure Chetasa with a heart Tat of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Chikir Shitam, the intended activities. Prarishyamane, gladdened. Asubhi, with senses. Kardamam, to Kardamamuni. Cha, and Devahuti. Idam, this. Abhyadat, spoke. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Abhay Charana Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. After worshipping the Supreme Lord with gladdened senses and a pure heart for his intended activities as an incarnation, Brahma spoke as follows to Kardama and Devahuti. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, anyone who understands the transcendental activities, the appearance and the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be considered liberated. Brahma is therefore a liberated soul. Although he is in charge of this material world, he is not exactly like the common living entity. Since he is liberated from the majority of the follies of the common living entities, he was in knowledge of the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he therefore worshipped the Lord's activities. And with a glad heart, he also praised Kardak Muni, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Kapila had appeared as his son. One who can become the father of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is certainly a great devotee. There is a verse spoken by a Brahmana in which he says that he does not know what the Vedas and what the Puranas are, but while others might be interested in the Vedas or Puranas, he is interested in Nanda Maharaj, who appeared as the father of Krishna. The Brahmana wanted to worship Nanda Maharaj because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as a child, crawled in the yard of his house. These are some of the good sentiments. Brahma not only worshipped the incarnation of Godhead, Kapila, but also praised his so-called father, Kadama Muni. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Shakhantamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jaganpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Devi Pranamami Hari Pri Vanshakapadrubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Rangayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamam Vande Shri Guru Dinatarya Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So I beg the blessings of all the devotees to speak something on Srimad Bhagavatam, especially in this Kishore Prabhu. So in this particular purport, it is mentioned that how Brahma came to to actually congratulate Kardama Muni and Devahuti. And just on a side note, what is very important for any living entity, any devotee especially, is his internal mood. It's the most important thing. And despite whatever external may be going on, what is going on internally is the most important thing. So it's very amazing that Kardama Muni and Devahuti, actually Devahuti was lamenting. You see, last few verses, Devahuti is lamenting that, oh, she wasted her time, and instead of getting transcendental knowledge, she engaged in um, in her words, she engaged in quote unquote sense gratification. I'm not qualified to speak on exalted personalities, but I'm just giving a context here. So, in Devahuti's words, she lamented that she engaged in sense gratification. So, but here we see that Brahma is coming and congratulating Kardama and Devahuti for because Kapila is going to Kapila has appeared or is going to appear. So this is very enlivening and very amazing that whenever a devotee takes a humble position in his heart in front of Krishna, then automatically by Krishna's inconceivable arrangement, others come to appreciate it somehow or other. So from this we can see that what is really appreciated by anyone genuinely is the internal mood. So that's the most important thing, and that's the real preaching. The real preaching is the internal mood, the internal meditation of any devotee. And that's what actually enlivens people, that's what actually enlightens people, inspires people. Because on the mental platform and on the intellectual platform, one can be impressed by someone. But when the soul, because the soul is there and the soul knows, the soul senses, if the soul does not act, the soul does not have any influence, the pure spirit soul does not have an influence on the heart of a practicing devotee, how does he experience inspiration, enthusiasm, enlightenment in the presence of a great personality? It's because of the soul. So the soul finds great happiness in the association of great devotees. So the soul can recognize that, wow, here is a very exalted devotee. Like just now, when Yogeshwar Prabhu was dancing, I was like feeling genuinely that, wow, he's actually in the embrace of the Supreme Lord. He's actually in the shelter of the Supreme Lord. And such an amazing thing, actually. Like if someone has attained the shelter of Krishna, who has firmly surrendered to Krishna, then Krishna will never leave such a person, especially that person has surrendered through the Guru Parampara. Krishna will never leave that person, and Krishna, whatever that person does, will be, like there is a signature whenever an important person he makes a patent or he gives an order, then there is always a sign, there is a stamp. So Krishna puts his stamp on every activity of such a devotee. So that's the most amazing, inspiring aspect of exalted devotees, that they are actually backed or they are actually supported at every moment by the Supreme Lord. So, and that is because they are fully surrendered. They are fully surrendered, and because of that, the Lord supports them. And that's actually the secret of pure devotional service. That pure devotional service means simply to surrender to Krishna, and Krishna is the doer. Like Prabhupada says in one purport, or Prabhupada says in one letter, somewhere Prabhupada says that ultimately all the work is done by the Supreme Lord. The devotee makes so much endeavor in order to please the Supreme Lord, to make advancement, but the devotee does not make advancement by his endeavor. Ultimately, all the work is done by the Supreme Lord. Like Srimad Prabhu says that when a pure devotee he chants the pure name, chants Shuddhanam, then it is looking like the devotee is chanting, but actually it is the Lord dancing. And that's why pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, they cannot stop chanting. Because even though they may want to stop chanting in order to do other activities, they cannot stop because the Lord doesn't want to leave them. The Lord wants to keep dancing. So, coming back to the context, so this is how powerful the example of an exalted devotee is. That's actually what is preaching. That is the shining example which is in front of all of us. And that's Krishna's amazing arrangement, that Krishna in front of us puts shining examples of people who actually apply the process properly. And that's very important, because going deeper into the subject matter, a person who is actually practicing the process properly, what happens? His subtle body is pure. His subtle body is very pure, and so because of that, wherever he goes, the influence of that subtle body spreads, and that's why it becomes very easy to practice devotional service. Like when Sri Kishore came back with experience, then kirtans, seva is so much more enthusiastic. Why? Because of the influence of this subtle body. So exalted devotees, they spread their divine consciousness by their subtle body, and that's what is very, very pleasing to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here, Shri Radha, Gopijana Vallabh, Prabhupada Gauraja, Guru Srila Prabhupada. So here, Brahma is congratulating them. So this is a very important teaching, first of all, that whenever we see something amazing, something inspiring in Krishna consciousness, at least in our heart, we must appreciate it. We may not be able to appreciate always by speaking or glorifying, because we may not be in that situation, or we may not be in contact with the devotee, but at least we should recognize that, wow, how amazing is this devotee's consciousness. This devotee has such an exalted consciousness. And when one glorifies other devotees from the heart for their devotion, not for external things, but actually for their devotion, then what happens? He becomes happy. And Prabhupada says, if you want to realize Krishna, you have to be happy. You have to be in bliss. That's when you will actually realize Krishna. Prabhupada says clearly in a lecture. So the four defects of living entities generally is to commit mistakes, to be illusioned, to have imperfect senses, and to cheat others. So this is the four common problems with living conditioned souls, including myself. So here it is mentioned that Brahma is not such a person. Brahma is a liberated soul. Even though Prabhupada says, even though he may be in charge of this material world, he is a liberated soul. And a liberated soul is someone who is always performing all activities for the exclusive pleasure of Krishna. It may look like he is doing the same thing, but his consciousness is completely different. And that's why the quality of his activities is also completely different. And that is the teaching of Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Tatmat Pramanam Shastram Karya Akarya Vivastita. So, how do we know what is to be done and what is not to be done? It is decided by Shastra. So, Shastra, and especially in ISKCON Prabhupada's purports, clearly underline what should be done and what should not be done. So that's why it's very important for us to familiarize ourselves with Prabhupada's purpose. And here Brahma is showing by his own example how to always remember the Supreme Lord. So how we always remember the Supreme Lord? We can always remember the Supreme Lord only when the Lord becomes pleased with us. So how do we please the Lord? By pleasing the Lord's devotees. And the devotees of the Lord are innumerable. And what is the characteristic of the devotees of the Supreme Lord? It's mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam that the devotees of the Supreme Lord, they are so attached to Krishna that whether they're eating, they're sleeping, they're laying down, they're always thinking about Krishna's happiness. They're always thinking about Krishna's happiness. They're thinking so much about Krishna's happiness that they forget their own happiness. They never think of their own happiness. Like, for example, you see in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's pastimes that when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was busy in serving Srimad Bhagavatam, and his secretary used to ask him that why did you come and take prasad? Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, why are you interrupting? Why are you interrupting me in my service? So, because the consciousness is completely beyond the body platform, it's not on the platform of senses and self gratification, so on and so forth. So that is a shining example that if someone always meditates on the pleasure of Guru and Krishna, then they can cross over all obstacles. And we see this in the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada also, that Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they meditated so much on his pleasure at every moment. And that's why they were able to live in such severe conditions. Externally, all the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they were in very difficult condition. But internally, because they were always meditating on the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada, therefore, they were always in happiness. They were always so blissful and they were making the best of their spiritual life. Whatever opportunities they had to render devotional service, they were making the best out of it. Why? Because they were always meditating on the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. And they became so happy that, oh, this is Prabhupada's movement, this is Prabhupada's temple, this is Prabhupada's institution, this is Prabhupada's seva. So I have to do this seva, I must do this seva. It's my greatest fortune to do this seva. So it's such a grateful heart, humble mood they were serving, and so because of that, they were always so blissful. They were so blissful, and this is all because they were always meditating on the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. So when one, I'm not qualified, but I aspire. So when one always meditates on the pleasure of Guru and Krishna, then one can eventually cross beyond desiring his own pleasure. And this is very important even as practicing devotees, because um, we don't have to meditate on how to gratify our senses because it's automatically going on. So unless we forcefully meditate on the pleasure of Guru and Krishna, we cannot get out of the tendency to meditate on our own happiness. And this is so interesting that how much have you tried to gratify yourself, you will never be pleased, you will never be happy. Like we have the experience before we were devotee, how much ever we kept eating, we were never satisfied. But when even on days like Janmashtami and days we're fasting, even when we're cooking, because we're cooking for Krishna, we are so happy and we are not meditating that time when we're cooking for Krishna. Oh, this looks so nice. Yum, yum, yum. We're not meditating. Why? Because that's the nature. When you try to gratify Krishna's senses, then Krishna automatically gratifies, or Krishna automatically, satisfies your own senses. And Prabhupada is saying again that one who can become the father of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is certainly a great devotee. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the other day Prabhupada was mentioning another purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very much happy, Prabhupada says in the purport, when out of transcendental affection, a devotee considers him as less important. And a devotee deals with Krishna very naturally, either as a friend,
as a son or as a lover. And Krishna very much relishes that. So, of course, it's a very elevated subject matter, but that's how Krishna is actually pleased. So, in this movement of Srila Prabhupada, if we want to please Krishna, especially for those who are not pure devotees, we have to realize that we have no ability to please Krishna. We cannot please Krishna. Because to please Krishna, we have to have that natural loving mood, and it cannot be acquired, it has to be awarded. So if we don't have that loving mood, then we have to serve, we have to facilitate the desire of those who have that loving mood, who have that natural devotion which is flowing in their blood. And by serving them, by becoming their servant, then Krishna will be very much pleased with us. And that's why in Krishna consciousness, the most important thing is actually Vaishnav Seva. Vaishnav Seva is everything. So if we have this mood of always serving devotees, always getting the blessings of devotees, uh, we should ask ourselves, how much do we pray for the blessings of devotees, blessings of pure devotees? Because the more and more we pray for the blessings of pure devotees, then the more and more our consciousness will become anupul here. Because to become anupul, to become favorable towards Krishna's pleasure, it requires mercy. It requires a force. Otherwise, it's difficult because it's going against our ego. So the more and more we pray, we cry out for the mercy of Prabhupada, we will get inspiration from within the heart. We will get the desire to actually satisfy Krishna. Because Srila Prabhupada is a personality who only existed for Krishna's pleasure. Sometimes if we have the opportunity to see exalted devotees doing anything, we realize that how actually they have no desire for their own pleasure. How can we understand? You see some exalted devotee taking prasad, for example. They are taking prasad or doing anything. They're doing very, very carefully. Generally, for example, eating or sleeping or doing anything, folding clothes, generally you just do it quickly. Okay, let's do it quickly and get over with. But you see a pure devotee takes care in everything. So that means he's doing everything as a service. He's not doing things for self gratification. He's doing everything as a service to Krishna. And that's how we can understand that they have no desire to please their own self. And in this way, when we pray and we cry and we beg the blessings of pure devotees constantly, then they will help us to control our mind and actually become a serious devotee. The other day, Srila Prabhupada was mentioning, this week Prabhupada was mentioning in the lecture that we are so fortunate that we came in touch with pure devotional service. And Prabhupada recommended in that lecture two things. Prabhupada said to see the deity. Prabhupada didn't say deity worship. Prabhupada said just to see the deity. And second, Prabhupada says is to hear. Prabhupada says if you simply do these two things, you just come and see the deity uh, and you hear about Krishna. Uh, in course of time, you will become a great devotee. So this is very, very powerful, very, very powerful. And that's why we have to take great advantage of both the lectures in person and Prabhupada's recordings. Because hearing in person is very important. Why? Because it shows this humble, surrendering mood. And it's also very important that we develop transcendental faith, we develop unflinching faith in the words of Srila Prabhupada. And unless we develop unflinching faith on the words of Srila Prabhupada, we cannot actually see Prabhupada's devotion. We cannot see Prabhupada's mood. And the only thing which is required is actually faith. Faith is very, very powerful, very, very powerful. Like the shining example in Chaitanya Charitamrita is the Brahmana. So the Brahmana who Mahaprabhu met in South India was trying to read Bhagavad Gita. He was not reading, he was trying to read. And actually, he was not able to read because why? Because he was illiterate. But just because he had so much faith that my Guru told me to do this, therefore, if I do this, I will attain the perfection. Because he had that full faith in that, therefore, he got the darshan of the Supreme Lord. How astounding is that? It's almost like that bird who is trying to dry out the ocean with its beak and Garuda coming and returning its egg. I mean, it's million times more astounding than that. Just think about that Brahmana. What was his consciousness? Where was he? What was he doing? What was the chance that Supreme Personality would personally come and congratulate him, say that you are the real authority in Bhagavad Gita? What is the probability? It's just because of his mood. Because of his mood and unflinching faith, it was so powerful, it attracted the Supreme Personality of Godhead. From nowhere. He was nowhere, and he attracted the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by that faith, simply by his humility. He was so fortunate. I mean, he was so he actually achieved the perfection of his life when he got the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that is the teaching of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada always stressed that how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mood that Trinada Pisunichena Tarurapi Saishtana Hamanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. So this mood of a devotee, which is only realized at a very high platform. Only a pure devotee can actually practice this verse properly. Because to not desire any respect for oneself means that one's heart should be completely pure. Otherwise, it's impossible. So it's very important to associate with pure devotees by sound vibration, and it's very important to have faith, to have unflinching faith in pure devotees. Whatever pure devotees do, whatever exalted devotees do, like I mentioned, are actually stamped or supported or authorized, backed by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why when pure devotees, exalted devotees desire something, it will happen. It will happen. And that's why we should, as much as possible, not have the mood of trying to correct or trying to suggest to exalted devotees what they should do. Oh, you should do like this. Oh, you should do like that. Because it may look like they're on the same platform. It may look like they're eating, they're sleeping, it's same. But no, it's completely different because they're functioning on a completely different platform. It looks same, but it's completely different. We cannot understand. We cannot understand. That's why we have to take a humble position in front of them again and again and again. And in that way, that will be very pleasing to Krishna. So just like following the mood of that Brahmana, if one takes humble position day after day, month after month, constantly, then that will attract the attention of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says that if you want to please Krishna, especially Krishna, then humility is a must. Absolutely. I mean, and the more and more we increase our negativity, the more and more we increase our smallness in our heart, the more and more there is a probability that we will be lifted up by Krishna. Because that is Krishna's condition, that if you want to be authorized or you want to be accepted by Krishna, humility is an absolute must. And I'm speaking for myself, it's so important that especially when dealing with junior devotees, quote unquote, nobody is junior, but just for the sake of discussion, devotees who we may be preaching to or quote unquote, it's very important that although sometimes one may have to correct or one may have to help someone, but always very important to not to use one's false ego and actually functional platform of false ego and take instead of taking a humble position, we take up, I mean, it's very easy to take a proud position. So that's very important. And it's actually the only thing which is going to help us in our spiritual life is this thing, is to always take a humble position. Because humility is like something that increases your vision. So the more and more one becomes humble, the more and more one's spiritual vision increases. The more and more one can see. One can see, like when one takes a humble position, before speaking something, he can see that oh, there is an there's going to be an effect to this. There's going to be an adverse effect to this. So let me not speak. Let me not do. Or sometimes one wants to do something. No, no, something in, by the mercy of Krishna says, wait, wait, don't do, don't do, don't do. So this connection Paramatma, this understanding of how to please Krishna, this understanding of how to progress to Krishna consciousness is simply achieved by this one thing is to practice genuine humility, and genuine humility will develop when we come in front of exalted devotees. It's natural, it's normal. That's why we have to associate. I mean, one very exalted devotee was one time saying that it's we feel so happy associating with devotees who are on our level because they accept what they will do, what we do. But when you associate with more exalted devotees, they'll always point out the defects. Oh, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, this is not the standard. Because of our false ego, we don't want to associate with devotees who are more exalted than us. But that's the only solution. So by constantly associating with devotees who are more exalted, who are situated on a higher platform of Krishna consciousness, then one becomes humble. And that humility gives one transcendental vision, gives one um, spiritual vision, and that's absolutely required in the path of Krishna consciousness. So, this is the teaching of this verse that in order to worship the Supreme Lord with gladdened senses and a pure heart, one has to get the blessings of pure devotees or exalted devotees. That's their association is a must. Without association of exalted sadhus, it's impossible to engage in Shravana and Kirtanam with determination. Sons, Mahat Sevaya Vipra, only by serving the Mahat, only by living with the Mahat, only by associating the Mahat, getting the blessings of Mahat, is it possible to actually engage in Krishna consciousness, engaging in Shravana Kirtanam with determination. And that's why it is so important. And actually, I'm thinking about myself that how much the mind is averse to devotional service, how much the mind is actually averse to Shravanam and Kirtanam. Like speaking for myself, it's so easy to see. While taking prasad, the mind is not interested. Oh, let me hear Prabhupada. While taking bath in the bathroom, no, it's okay. It's only a few minutes. So, oh, it's only a few minutes. Yeah, a few minutes of Maya associating with the mind. So, the day when we will be loaded with Krishna conscious sound vibration or chanting of the holy name 24 hours a day, that day we can actually say, speak for myself, that Ananda Nivriti is beginning to take serious effect. So without engaging in constant Shravana Kirtana, it's impossible, completely impossible to get any taste. And the only way this is possible, because one has to have the intelligence to do this, one has to have the inspiration to do this, is only possible by associating, by pleasing great souls. So this is what we learn. And at least in our heart, we can always take the opportunity to glorify activities of devotees, pure activities. We see sometimes the darshan is so wonderful, is so divine. Oh, wow. We appreciate, oh, such and such devotee has such a pure consciousness. So when we appreciate it, the next time we see that devotee, then our respect for that person grows. And anything a devotee does, when we see that wow, devotee is serving so nicely, chanting so nicely, dancing so nicely, we appreciate. And this gratitude to Krishna for the association of devotees is what is going to pave the way or help us ourselves
to actually walk on the path of surrender. So the goal of spiritual life is simply to walk on the path of surrender, and ultimately Krishna knows everything. Like we can always remind ourselves, Krishna knows how we will advance. Krishna knows when, what we need, etc. Krishna knows everything. So sincere desire should be there to depend on Krishna's arrangement, on devotees' arrangement, authorities' arrangement, and that mood will ultimately give rise to the feeling in the heart, that I am most fallen, but my only hope and my only shelter, the only shelter I ever want is the shelter of the mercy of great souls. That's my only shelter. There's no other shelter. So that mood, when it becomes very strong in the heart, Shakti Buddhi Him Ami Atiti, then Koro More Atmas, which means then the great souls, they accept ourselves as part of their plan to please Krishna, as part of their plan to spread Krishna consciousness. And as a result of that, acting on that mood, what happens? One becomes an eternal associate of pure devotees. And when you become an eternal associate of pure devotees, then naturally you become an eternal associate of Krishna. So that is the path of pure devotional service. Sorry if I spoke anything wrong, inappropriate, but not qualified, but I'm just aspiring to walk on this path, because we realize, like, if we don't endeavor for pure devotional service, if we don't pray for pure devotional service, then we're just going to wind up in our own desires for sense gratification. So this is the only hope. There is no other hope in this world. You can't even be happy. You can't even be happy in this world. To be happy in this world is so difficult. It's so difficult. So even if you want to be happy, then the only way is pure devotional service. Otherwise, you cannot get permanent happiness. Otherwise, every happiness has a side effect. Every enjoyment in this world has a side effect. Like, I'll just end with one line. Bhagavatam says, very heavy. Bhagavatam says, as soon as you start desiring some sense gratification, that moment your suffering starts. That moment. So this is, Bhagavatam is speaking. This is the reality of this material world. Anyone has any question or comment?
Yeah, I have one question. You said you have to associate more with the senior devotee, but somewhere I heard that you have to associate only 20% with senior devotees and 20 and 15 or 20%, and then 15 or 20% with junior devotees. But you have to associate more with equals because your egos will be purified.
Yeah.
Somewhere I heard like that. Yeah. You should, if you associate more with senior devotees, you will develop familiarity, and then it will ruin your devotional.
Yeah. So association means what? Association means hearing. Association, serving. That's a real association. So when this that type of association, we should associate more with junior. Less with senior devotees, so you don't develop familiarity. So that kind of association means just mingling and just kind of dealing artificially. But there is no limit to the amount you can hear from them. There is no limit to the amount you can serve them. That is the key. So, and again, I'm just speaking for myself. Many times we are with each other, and we're just, may not be outright prajalpa, but it's not Krishna conscious discussion, and we are not deepening our consciousness. So yeah, it's very important to, and you see, many times we don't speak about Krishna even with equals or whatever, and it just turns into Maya. It's like Prabhupada says now, that when Krishna was accepted, Arjuna accepted Krishna as a spiritual master, then the conversation became very productive, very conclusive. So then it was not like, I think this, I think that. It was like, no, this is this, this is this. So that's why it's very important to have such conversations and to engage in hearing about Krishna.
So otherwise, it just turns into Prajalpa. And then what is the next step after Prajalpa is Vaishnava natural. Either subtle or it may not be outright Prajalpa, but yeah, well, you know, it's Prajalpa and it's going to suck our spiritual energy. Like many times I think about it, that I mean, we associate with each other, quote unquote. And the whole morning program, we are so serious, so sincere, so careful. Oh, my consciousness, my consciousness, my consciousness. Think of Krishna, think of Krishna, think of Krishna. We're trying from 5 to 9. And then because of our carelessness in speaking, then we just drain that energy. We drain that energy and forget about anyone else. We become dissatisfied. And when we become dissatisfied, then we spread that dissatisfaction to others in the form of whatever. I'm speaking for myself. So, yeah, I mean, we have to constantly associate with pure devotees, exalted devotees. How? By hearing from them. That is the way to associate. And that because always what happens now, we hear from exalted devotees, even if we hear, we always feel that, oh, I have so much life, what I'm doing with my life. So that always creates a pressure on us that we have to advance, we have to advance, we have to advance. And again, I'm not speaking about only, I'm not saying we should only associate with more senior or exalted devotees. But my point is association should be in such a way that it inspires us to go forward in our Krishna consciousness. And that's why it's best for ourselves to always see others as more exalted than us. It's very important. Like whoever it is, we see as more exalted, then we can learn from them. We can learn from them, we can hear from them. So that's very important. Like, when we're doing arti, when we're seeing devotees, maybe we may not be able to take dust from their feet physically, but we can definitely take dust from their feet mentally. And that will increase our faith, and Krishna will reciprocate through them to us. So, yeah, I mean, uh, association of sincere devotees is, very, very important. And no, I mean, of course, not just senior devotees, but yeah, sincere devotees. So anyone who follows anything that we feel that we can follow or we're lacking, then yeah, we must here we become inspired by the devotee to do that thing. So yeah, but hearing is essential. This is no substitute for hearing, because that's the only way. Prabhupada, that's why I stress so much on hearing. That's the only way we'll know where we should be. Like Prabhupada says, if you are not happy in Krishna consciousness, you're in Maya. Simple. I mean, what a powerful statement that is. I mean, I speak for myself, I'm not always ecstatic, always happy in Krishna consciousness. So if I think that now I'm in Maya, that's very good for my consciousness. Like, wake up, what you're doing. Anyone else has any other question or comment? Online?
Raji, I just wanted to extend that Ravina Prabhu's point. But you are saying that when we associate more with senior devotees, there's a chance of developing familiarity. But even while service, there will be chance of developing familiarity, right, Prabhuji?
Yeah, that's why when we serve them now, we should always maintain little distance, like in the sense that yeah, I mean, we can start with at least our speech, even though we might feel something, we always we maintain little humble disposition. And yeah, Prabhu, this familiarity solution is with anyone, Prabhu. We can become familiar with anyone, and if becoming familiar with anyone is danger. It's not like only familiarity with senior devotees. Familiarity with anyone is danger, because after familiarity comes aparad. So Krishna will arrange. You become familiar with a devotee, sorry, material energy will arrange. That give you opportunity to offend this devotee. So that's why familiarity with anyone is dangerous. And the only solution to material familiarity is spiritual familiarity. His Holiness Giranman says the only solution to material familiarity is spiritual familiarity. Unless you become familiar with the advanced consciousness, with the advanced state, with the exalted Krishna consciousness of anyone, unless you perceive how much they are pleasing to Krishna, naturally become familiar with them. So that's the only solution. So is it that, oh, we become familiar, so we should not do service, we should stay away? No, that's not the solution. The solution is to purify our consciousness by hearing constantly. My experience is, if we hear constantly from great souls, we have association of great souls, we can see everyone is exalted. We can see everyone has instruments of Krishna's mercy. We can see Krishna's mercy flowing through everyone. The only reason why I'm not able to see Krishna's mercy, Krishna's divinity, Krishna's personality flowing through someone is because, speak for myself, lack of my Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, how can a pure devotee see everyone as a pure devotee of Krishna? A pure devotee can have that consciousness. How is it possible? Because of his consciousness. Like Mahaprabhu said, someone who chants the name of Krishna once is a devotee. So yeah, bro, etiquettes are very important, very, very important. And yeah, basically not getting more familiar than, not going closer than what is required. That etiquette is very important. So when we actually take senior devotees, exalted devotees, as we take little freedom and we kind of try to go closer and kind of delve into their personal life, then yeah, that is wrong, that is dangerous. But serving from a distance is good. Like, okay, I have service, let me do service. And as soon as I've done service, I'm done. Like no further unnecessary kind of loose talking. So if they speak, that's their mercy. But we should always maintain some safe distance. Like from our side, we should always understand that their consciousness is on a higher platform, on a lower platform, always. Is that okay, Prabhuji?
Yes, Freddy. Thank you very much, bro.
Okay. If nobody else has any other question or comment, we will end. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyevacha Vaitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo. Please forgive me and please bless me that I can take advantage of the association of great souls. Hare Krishna. Jai Guru Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.